and I think we're going to get going here in a couple of moments. I didn't actually get a chance to stand up and stretch. I'm just going to stretch my arms between the last sessions. You know, you think you'd have like 5 minutes to move over from one session to the other, and you would actually have a chance to like have a drink of water or something, but that didn't work out. But welcome everyone, and I don't know if folks had a chance to. I know our guests here now may not have had a chance to join our last session, but it was really great, and there was some nice shout outs to our election management bodies and how fortunate we are to have a difference in the U.S. because our lead guest was from the U.S. and doing campus-based engagement there, and she was talking about some of the challenges there that we don't have in the same way here. So for those of you who are joining us, thank you. You've made it to the Elections Are Coming, Are You Ready session with representatives from Elections Canada, Elections Ontario, and Ryerson Votes. And I am now going to see if I can make this work. I'm going to go live with a little poll, and you should see that on the top of your screen. Our panelists will not see it, so don't worry. But the people in the feed loop should see a little poll that asks, during the 2019 federal election, you know, and then it gives you a bunch of choices. So hopefully you see that and you could interact with that poll there. And then while people are hopefully seeing that, I'm going to go back to my notes. And we're lucky because, in fact, for most people in Canada, voting is easy. And our election management bodies are our allies and not our adversaries in an effort to reduce barriers to voting. I've been working with elections administrators at all levels of government for the last 6 years. And honestly, I'm in awe of the people who are with us today. And they really are the unsung heroes of our democracy, right? And, you know, they are at their best when we hear nothing about their work, right? Nobody goes up and says, wow, you know, they had a great election and nothing went wrong. That never makes headlines. It's any little thing, and their margin of error is essentially zero. And I don't know how many jobs that is. Maybe nuclear scientists or nuclear, you know, running a nuclear reactor, your margin of error is zero. But you know, it's comparable to that. And we've seen that though, and it's been brought home for those of us who've been paying attention to events to our south. And that, sorry, you know what? I think I have to omit everybody. That's why we're not getting engagement. My bad. We're gonna start again, reset. Okay. I saw everybody in the participants. I saw the numbers in the participants, and I didn't realize that they, in fact, hadn't joined. Okay. Sorry, folks. I had a little technical error and didn't realize that not everybody had joined the meeting, and I had to admit you all. But now that we've got people, we're going to restart over. And welcome. I've been talking at the screen here and not realizing you're not all on. So you now have made it into the Welcome to the Elections Are Coming, Are You Ready session with representatives from Elections Canada, Elections Ontario, and Ryerson Votes. And we have a question that you should see up in your Engage tab at the top there that I'd love to just get you to quick poll, if you can answer the poll there. And it says, during the 2019 federal election, and then it gives you some choices about how you engage during the 2019 federal election. So if you can take a moment to fill in that poll. And we are lucky here in Canada because for most people voting in Canada, it's easy. Our election management bodies are our allies and not our adversaries in our effort to reduce barriers to voting. I've been working with election administrators at all levels of government for the last 6 years, and honestly, I am in awe of their dedication and work. Election administrators are the unsung heroes of democracy. Or to use another current framing, they are the democracy's frontline workers. And I think, you know, we want to thank them for their work. We do not hear about their work unless there's a problem. And it's, I think, really important to recognize that they are trying to reduce barriers for folks who want to participate. And those of us who paid attention to what's happening to the south of us, that they realize, you know, how critical it is that this work gets done. That being said, we also know that there is more work to be done, and that there are still people for whom there are barriers to participation that we need to and want to reduce. But we want to turn it over to them. We're going to have each of our presenters today make a short presentation, and then we're really going to open it up to conversations and questions from you that you may have. So let me do a quick introduction of our panelists. We have Kayla Gray, who leads the Public Engagement Education Officer at Elections Ontario, where she works to reduce barriers to voting and build inclusive processes through outreach initiatives, material, and events. Prior to joining Elections Ontario, she has facilitated democratic engagement through citizen reference panels, advocacy and research initiatives, and collaborative forums. She's joined by Sharmila Biswas. Sharmila is currently a senior outreach officer with Elections Canada and Stakeholder Engagement Group, and managed the Youth, Students, and New Canadian Files. She has been working in Elections Canada since 2009, and prior to entering the federal public service, she has worked in communications for several national not-for-profit organizations in the Ottawa area. All right, I have to pause here again and let everybody in. I'm doing double duty now on the tech side and the introductions. And Sharmila was responsible for helping to organize and run the on-campus voter programs at polling stations that were in piloted in 2015 and run again in 2019. Finally, we are joined by Taylor Deasley, who led the Ryerson Votes campaign and founded Amplify Ryerson, that is co-presenting this event, and shares a deep commitment to ensuring that students have a voice in shaping their future. Taylor comes to this work not with a strong partisan position, but a recognition that whatever matters to students, democracy matters to that. So that's what I'll turn it over to Taylor, Kayla, and Sharmila for short presentations, and then we'll open it up to you. You can ask your questions through the Engage tab to post questions and options. All right, let me just take a quick look. Okay, the polls. All right, I'm not sure that we made the poll work on the technology side, but I'm just going to ignore that and jump and turn it over now to Taylor to get us going. And I will make
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me here today. I'm really excited to be talking with all of you. So I'm just going to try to share my screen here just so I can get some pictures. Can you? Okay. So I'll just present this. So I'm just going to be sharing kind of some pictures of the Ryerson Votes campaign as I kind of go over the campaign and kind of some lessons learned. So for a little bit of background, I'm a Ryerson student. I'm in the politics program in my 4th year, and in the 2019 federal election, I worked with an incredible team of 50 volunteers at Ryerson University to launch the biggest voter engagement campaign that we've had at our university in forever. So it was really exciting, and it was a great way to kind of really engage with students on a face-to-face level and really learn about what issues matter to them and kind of their barriers to voting and their hesitancies. So I kind of want to talk about what worked, what didn't work, and kind of what lessons can be transferred to future. So Ryerson Votes, by any measure, was a successful campaign. We increased voter engagement by 53% from the previous federal election for on-campus voting, and we engaged with 20,000+ students on campus. We worked with 55 organizations on campus to kind of mobilize a campus-wide effort to increase voter engagement. And so I kind of want to go over kind of some things that I learned during the campaign, and also how much Elections Canada was able to really be a support with that effort as well. So first of all, in the 2019 federal election, as many of us know, young people are the largest voting bloc in the country. And so it was said in the 2019 federal election, if every young person voted, they could decide the results of the federal election. So they have a lot of power, more power than they've ever had. And I think young people are starting to see that, and they're starting to realize we have a lot of power in the decisions that are being made, and our vote does count. And I think even with COVID and everything that's gone on with the pandemic and in the United States over the past year or two, we've really seen how much government is a driving force in our lives, and how much our vote really does matter, and how much the decisions made at a higher level do impact our lives on the day-to-day. And I think we're seeing that, and especially young people are seeing that more and more as the years go on. So that's been really interesting to see. And what we really were able to learn on campus when we were everywhere. We were talking to students at homecoming events, at Frosh Week, in classrooms, kind of using every avenue to really connect with students. And what we really learned was that students want to vote. They want to be engaged. They're interested in the political process. They have opinions. They have things to say. And that isn't always a common thought about young people, because the voter engagement levels nationwide have been significantly lower. But I think what we're seeing is students are engaging in so many different ways, through advocacy groups, through issue campaigns, through social media, through community organizing, and they aren't necessarily using certain institutions of democratic engagement like voting. And I think that's something that can really be utilized in future election campaigns. So what we kind of saw when we were working on campus is that students are very intimidated by the process. And for some people that may seem surprising, but they're intimidated. And I think and based on my experience and conversations with them, it's that we take our vote very seriously, and we care about the results of our vote, and we do want to make the right decision. And in the age of such hyper polarization between all of the parties, it's hard to kind of find sources to guide you where you really want to go. It's hard to get information that's nonpartisan. It's hard to learn about just simply how to vote without somebody telling you who to vote for. And that's something that we experienced on campus a lot. People thought they were worried we were pushing a certain party, or that we were partisan. And they would ask me, well, who are you really voting for? And what is this? But that's not what it's about. And that was one of the key components of our campaign, was that it was nonpartisan. And we stayed strong with that. And all of our volunteers were aware that it was nonpartisan. The goal wasn't to push a party or push an issue. It was to push engagement, and it was to encourage students to really get involved. And as you can see in this picture here, it was a campaign that was we were open-minded people. We were around campus. We just wanted to talk to students. We wanted to get to know what issues really mattered to them. And we were able to have conversations where they felt comfortable to ask us those questions. And we were able to be resources. And Elections Canada was great in providing us with resources on how to vote, how to get involved, how to register, and all of those things. And they gave that to our campus free of charge. And so we were able to provide that to students and say, here's how to vote, here's how to do it. It's easy, it's fun, it's accessible. And that was the big main part of our campaign, which I think was really essential. Another crucial part of our campaign was that collaboration on campus was critical. So as I said earlier, we engaged with over 55 student groups and on-campus organizations, including different faculties, different programs, but as well as just regular student groups on campus. And so that collaboration was key because it allowed us to kind of get our message out there into all different avenues, because we want to move beyond just politics students and journalism students, and make sure that every faculty is engaged and every program is aware that they're able to participate in the democratic process, but also see how easy it is that it's on campus. And a lot of it, again, was kind of working with these campus organizations to themselves be voter engagement ambassadors, and kind of work with them and other student leaders on campus to say, this is how to vote, these are the resources, we've developed these resources, here's Elections Canada's work, and you can distribute that to your students that are in your organization. And so they were great, and I think that was really essential, that we had a campus that was excited about voter engagement, that also wanted to be involved. And we had a lot of support from our campus, and that was really essential to the campaign. So they were able to answer questions like, how do I register? And a lot of people didn't know how on-campus voting worked. They weren't aware that they could vote on campus even if they're from a different province. And so it was a lot of just providing the right information, making it clear, and making it something that was fun, and trying to kind of facilitate an environment where you kind of felt like you were missing out if you weren't being involved. We had music playing, we had megaphones, we had the mascot out, we had this a lot of opportunity for students to really say what issues matter to them. And that's kind of what this was, a poster that we had in front of the polling place, and it allowed students to say, what do you care about, what's the issue that matters to you, and why did you vote? And I think this was something that was really important, because we had people on campus staff, as well as the student volunteers, that really wanted you to be engaged. We wanted to hear what you had to say. We cared about what issues matter to you. And I think students really sensed that when they were engaged on campus. They felt comfortable. They were interested in the process. They felt empowered by the experience. And that was kind of our goal. And we had this was kind of in front of the on-campus polling location. And with that, I think it's important to mention that location is critical. It really matters not only where the polling place is and how accessible that is, but it also matters where you're doing the voter engagement efforts on campus. Where are you engaging with students? Are you kind of making sure that you're available in every location? We booked tables in every building on campus. We went to student events, we went to classrooms. We participated in lectures. So we made ourselves kind of visible to all students, not just specific faculties. We kind of were stationed in front of the polling place for the 5 days that the on-campus voting was happening, and kind of working as a guide to show students how to vote, how to get involved. We also had Elections Canada staff that were there that worked with us, that kind of helped guide students and show them how to register. And they had a lot of they provided a lot of staff to our university, which was great. And what was also excellent about our polling place was that it was in the student campus center. So it was right on campus. It was at the center, the heart of the campus. And it was able to have a lot of outdoor space, so we could have a lot of volunteers outside kind of promoting it as well. And then what was great was that we had an hour and a half line to vote the last 2 days of on-campus voting, and you could kind of see that line coming out of the front door, kind of going around the building, and that gathered a lot of excitement as well. And again, that was kind of starting that excitement of, oh, what am I missing out on? I want to vote, I want to be involved, I want a button, I want to write on the poster and take pictures. And that was kind of something that we were able to really gather a lot of excitement about, and that kind of increased engagement as well. So the location, again, of the polling place, as well as the voter engagement tabling and voter engagement efforts, is really critical, and being kind of everywhere as much as you can, so that every student is able to really be aware of the campaign and come up to talk to you. These are also some of the other locations that we had on campus during Frosh Week, during a student event here. We had mascot come, so we were kind of making sure to be kind of impossible to ignore, I guess. And the last part is that supporting dedicated staff is critical. And what was great about what Elections Canada did is that they hired community relations officers, and I was one of them, and a few other students were on campus as well. that were part of the Ryerson Votes campaign, they were also hired as community relations officers. And their main goal was to promote voter education, promote civic engagement on campus, and they worked kind of in tandem with the Ryerson Votes campaign. And they were provided with a lot of education on how the voter registration process worked, and they were paid for their time. So we were able to dedicate multiple hours a week. I was working 30 hours a week with a few other community relations officers, and that was on top of our volunteers. So we were able to put in a lot of hours in the month ahead of the federal election, which really allowed us to be there, be on campus every day at a different event. So that was crucial. And having Elections Canada there as a support to our campus was critical. And again, providing us with the materials, making us aware of how the process worked, working with them during the actual polling time. That was all really, really important to the campaign. So that was great that we had that opportunity. But again, with all of these things, it's important to kind of remember that there were still a lot of students that didn't vote. We had a 53% increase in voter engagement, but again, that was only a few thousand out of our high population of students. So again, for future, we want to keep increasing engagement as the federal elections go on. We want to increase our volunteer team. We want to increase work with Elections Canada, have more community relations officers, and maybe possibly a second polling place, because there was so much demand to get in and vote at the polling place. So yeah, that's a little summary on the campaign, and kind of some lessons learned and some key takeaways. I know it was fast, but I'm trying to be within the time limit. And if there's any questions, I can answer them in the question and answer period. And I will pause this share, but thank you.
Thanks, Taylor. I don't know if John was unmuting himself or I should just go right ahead. Okay, so I'm just going to share my screen as well. Just give me 1 second. Can folks see that? Thumbs up, awesome. Okay. Just give me 1 moment. So thanks so much for that presentation, Taylor. It's great to hear about all of the work that you and Elections Canada were able to do to increase voter engagement in the last federal election. And thanks for having me. I'm really happy to see new faces on my screen. My name's Kayla Gray, and I'm the Public Engagement Education Officer at Elections Ontario. And as John mentioned, a big part of that role is about raising awareness and reducing barriers to voting. So that includes for youth and first-time voters. So obviously, because of the pandemic, voter outreach can look a little bit different. And so that's why I'm really thankful for organizations like Ryerson that can convene us all together virtually like this. And I just want to go over a few things related to students' voting options. Invite everyone here to take a concrete step to get prepared for upcoming elections by updating your voter registration information online, and then share a little bit about how students can get involved in upcoming campus outreach initiatives and working at the polls. And I'm sure that Sharmila will speak about that a little bit as well. So before I start, just want to give a little note that while we've heard talk about a federal election approaching perhaps a little sooner, the Ontario provincial election is not scheduled until next year, June 2022. And then I also want to give a quick note that EMB, this is a term that might have come up or may come up today. And what does that stand for? So we're an election management body, meaning we are an independent agency of the Legislative Assembly. So we're not a government ministry, and we're completely nonpartisan, which I think is obviously important to highlight, especially in contrast to other international jurisdictions and some of the conversation that was had earlier today already. And then finally, a clarification that often can be a little bit confusing is we're separate from Elections Canada. Obviously, they run federal elections and we administer provincial elections. So sometimes there seems to still be a perception that youth can be apathetic, but As a lot of organizations at this event will know, youth can be highly engaged and through different avenues, but they might face additional barriers to voting and have more questions and need additional information to vote, especially for the first time. And we focus our efforts on first time and future voters because we know that if a young person votes in their first election, they're much more likely to continue voting as a practice throughout their life. So I just want to take a second to go over some eligibility and how students have a couple of different options to vote. And so to be eligible to vote, just up here on the screen, must be a Canadian citizen, 18 years of age or older on election day and a resident of Ontario. With students, the Election Act allows you to either vote, and you can choose basically to vote in two different places. Either one, if you attend school and you're living away from your home permanent address, you can vote in that electoral district. Or you can vote in your home electoral district where your residential or permanent or family address is. So there are two different options for you, and you can find more information when elections arise on our website about that. And I'm sure, again, Elections Canada will touch a little bit on that in their presentation, so I won't spend too much time there. So what does Elections Ontario do to engage youth and answer some of those common questions? Sorry, there's a quick list of some of the questions there, but we also engage youth through a few different channels. So we start early. At the top, we send school board education packages to elementary and high school students. And some of those education materials are also up on our website. So if student groups on campus, for instance, wanted to place an order for hard copy materials, you can place that order on our website, and I have the website and an email listed at the bottom of each of these slides. So we also designate certain times of the year between and before elections to focus on voter engagement. So I don't know if all of you have Provincial Voter Registration Month marked in your calendar or not, but now you know March is that time. So I invite each of you to take a few minutes, maybe today, between sessions to register or update your voter information online. The website is just up on the slide there. Maybe shoot someone a message to the chat to do the same. And I'll note, like, while registering in advance isn't necessary to vote, by updating your information online, it means you'll receive a voter information card in the mail about when and where to vote when the next election is called, and it can save you some time at the polls. So all you need is a piece of ID that shows your name and address, and there are clear instructions up on the website at that web link there. It's also a great time to engage other students on campus about voting between elections. So if you're looking for a time to kind of host some discussions about voting, you can tie some voter registration calls in with campaigns around pledging to vote. Those are great ways for a student group to engage others. I know the Ontario Undergraduate Student Alliance did some of that in the last election. So it's just a nice kind of hook to get people to talk about these issues before an election. And I also just want to note, if you are 16 or 17 years old, so you're not yet eligible to vote, you can register early with the Ontario Register of Future Voters. So basically what that means is that if you register early, once you turn 18, you'll be automatically added to the voters list and then have that same voter information card sent to you in the mail. So I don't know if there's a couple of them on this session or not, but this March we actually tried something new and encouraged high school students across the province to run their own virtual, of course, future voter registration drive. So there might be a few of those. We use the short form ORF student ambassadors joining us today, and I'll just give them a quick shout out. So thanks so much for leading some of your classmates through registration drives and discussing the reasons they're committing to voting in their first eligible election. And then closer to an election, we do head to campuses to support students through campus outreach program during Provincial Voter Registration Month in March and during Democracy Week in September. So we encourage students in schools and community organizations to also run voter education initiatives during those times, especially when students are already exploring different opportunities in the fall, for instance, including clubs and classes. I think it's even more important with a June election to engage students while they're on campus or participating in classes and clubs already, where more information can be shared. And the benefits of running voter engagement initiatives as students is you can complement election agencies' messages around how, when, and where to vote with discussions about issues that matter to you as well. Finally, closer to the election, we'll send out outreach kits that include a guide for students, information about accessible voting options, and on different days and ways to vote rather than just on election day. So if you're a student group or community organization that would like to be sent these materials, we'll be sending them out either through mail or digitally. You can send me an email at this email listed on the screen, outreach@elections.on.ca, and I can add you to your list, to our list, and you can help us spread that information. So I've been speaking a little bit quickly because I'm also trying to get this all in under 7 minutes as per John's request, but there are a few different ways to get involved. You can see a few of them on the screen here, but I just want to take one more minute to encourage those of you who want hands-on experience working in elections and democracy, and to make a couple $100 while you're doing it, to apply to work as poll workers. And this is for the federal or provincial election. I mean, obviously for provincial elections, you'll be applying with Elections Ontario, and for federal with Elections Canada. But keep an eye out on the Elections Ontario website ahead of an election and social media for application information. We'd love to have more young people involved as poll workers, especially across different cities of the province, and increasing, I think, the diversity of youth reflected in the democratic system, and having young people go and see people who kind of look like them at the polls and reduce some of that intimidation that Taylor was talking about, especially as well as the fact that the pandemic kind of has a little bit of an impact on older folks who often are poll workers, maybe not being able to show up in the same numbers. So that's my information up on the screen there. If you want to email me personally, you can email that outreach@elections.on.ca. It comes to me. And then I'm happy to take any questions after Sharmila's presentation. So thanks very much.
Thank you very much. I'm going to turn it over to Sharmila here. And I have Kayla shared that information in the chat function as well. So people have that. All right. Over to you, Sharmila.
Okay, well, thank you. I too am going to share my screen. Or do you guys see my screen? Okay, just give me 1 second. I lost my... All right. So thank you, John. And I'm very happy to be here this morning with Taylor and Kayla. Today, I'd like to focus on the upcoming federal election. As community members and student groups, there are things that you can do to start engaging your community members. So I want to make sure that you guys know about that and some other important information. So as John mentioned, I am with Elections Canada. We are the independent, non-partisan agency of Parliament responsible for conducting federal elections, by-elections, and referendum in Canada. Our mission is to ensure that Canadians have to ensure Canadians can exercise their right to vote and to be a candidate. However, we know through our research, and we've talked about it a lot this morning, especially when it comes to youth and students, that there are some Canadians that do face barriers to the electoral process. And through Elections Canada's Inspire Democracy program, we try to identify and address these informational barriers. And we have obviously the new electors, youth and new Canadians are part of that group, as well as Canadians with disabilities and Indigenous electors. So through our Inspire Democracy program, we get to work with fantastic organizations like the Democratic Engagement Exchange, Apathy is Boring, Canadian Alliance of Student associations, CASA, and other great organizations to help us amplify our voter information messages when there is a federal election. And these guys make us look way cooler than we actually are. And it's through the Inspire Democracy program is that it's meant to engage and to help organizations who work closely with these communities that face the most pronounced barriers and difficulties in participating in elections. And the major goals of Inspire Democracy is to assist collaborative efforts to learn about the barriers that community face, to act to reduce those barriers, and to connect with each other so that we can work more effectively together. I'm going to talk about some of the materials that we have developed to help to start engaging students in the upcoming elections in a couple of moments. So I really loved the title of this session this morning. It's "The Election is Coming, Are You Ready?" Well, for us at Elections Canada, we need to be ready to run in an election at all times. Now, that's a lot more predictable when there's a majority government. In a minority government, we know an election is coming. We just have no clue when that is going to happen. So there is a common misconception that we somehow know when the election is coming, but we totally do not. We just know that we have to be ready for it. So while the last one is still probably fresh in our minds, it took place in October 2019, we know that the next election, whenever it's going to be, is going to feel and look different. And that's obviously because of the global pandemic. So what is the plan for the next election? The plan should be to have a plan. Everybody needs a plan this election, especially since, you know, it's inarguably going to be different from the previous ones. And given the current state of affairs, obviously, Elections Canada is completely committed in protecting the health and safety of all its election workers and Canadian electors. As such, in consultation with local provincial authorities, and health and safety measures will be in place at all Elections Canada offices and polling stations. And you can see from the infographic that there will be hand sanitizer stations, the clear physical distance markers, only one poll worker per desk, and then of course we're going to encourage people to wear masks, single-use pencils, or you can bring your own pen or pencils, and just maintaining that physical distance. So here, I just wanted to review some practical things that you can do right now to get ready for the election. As many of you know or don't know, we won't be running the Vote on Campus program, which would provide Elections Canada offices on select campuses at the next election. I believe me, I hear your collective groans loud and clear. But as part of the planning for the next general election, our operations folks assess that on-campus voting, in these uncertain times, especially surrounding students' presence on campus across the country and significant additional pandemic-related challenges for our returning officers who actually run the elections, it's just not possible to run the program. However, our priority is to deliver a safe election whenever it does take place. This requires significant planning, and as the pandemic situation continues to evolve, we just adjust and refine our existing plan based on the advice of the health authorities. But for now, we don't plan to offer voting on campus at the next election. However, while we were not offering the service, there are many ways in which students can be able to cast their ballot. Working with our great stakeholders like the Democratic Exchange and CASA, we'll make sure that students are well aware of the safe voting options that are available to them. When I said that you should have a plan to make a plan, I just wanted to also review some concrete measures that you can take right now. And as you can see from the infographic, you can there are steps that you can do. You can first confirm that where your place of residence, what you consider home is. And once you determine that, it's always advisable to get yourself registered to vote. That way, you do get a voter information card once the election is called, and then you can use that as a proof of address, which barriers that students often have is to come up with the proper proof of address or identification. So you can use that. And so once you are registered and you can then make a plan to vote, you can see that there are many options that are available to students. And it's always good that to make sure that students have the information beforehand, because there are deadlines, especially when it comes to voting by mail and voting at the Elections Canada office. So it's good to get informed. And of course, always when you're ready to vote, to have your ID ready as well. Now, as Kayla had mentioned, there are for federal elections, working at the polling stations is a great opportunity for students and other Canadians to really be part of the whole electoral process. For the next federal election, we need to fill 285,000 positions. So we're really counting on students, Canadians, younger Canadians, to really apply for those positions. As we do have traditionally we do have an older workforce, and given the current COVID situation, they're the ones who are most vulnerable. So we're hoping that students are really going to be the ones who apply for these jobs, and they are paying jobs. You get paid for your time as well as the training. And like Taylor and both Kayla and Taylor had said, that, be that friendly face at the polls. The process can be intimidating. And if you're that friendly face, then you make the whole voting experience all the more relaxing and comfortable for your fellow Canadians. And for those, I had mentioned that through Inspire Democracy, we have developed a number of tools to engage community leaders, student organizations, to really help engage people around them. And in the coming weeks, we're going to have some updated information on our Inspire Democracy website. we do have toolkits that are available that focus really on an expanded view of what we think electoral participation is. It goes beyond just registering and voting to really, running in an election and working as working in a federal election. So these are really ways to be, to actively participate in democracy in Canada. So I would encourage all of you to check our website out in the coming weeks for these updated toolkits. So that's the end of my presentation. Here's some information on our Inspire Democracy website, as well as our Elections Canada website, which will have all it really is the authoritative source of all election information, and our Inspire Democracy email address. So if you're interested in joining our network and getting up-to-date information, we would love for you to join the party. So that's the end of my presentation, and I hope I didn't
All right.
over my allotted time.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. I think we may have a issue with the questions. We haven't seen questions come through the Engage tab, and that may be my fault. Unfortunately, with this feed loop platform, we as presenters here do not see what you as participants see. And so bouncing back and forth, and I apologize to everyone who probably has questions and may be feeling like they're like, why aren't they asking our questions? But I am going to ask some questions, and I've been trying to do a little troubleshooting on the back end. If you're able to access the chat, you can use the chat function, and I've seen one person raise their hand, and if you're able to do that, I can call on you as well. But I think there's been a lot of information presented here, and I do, want to, make sure we sort of covered some of the basics, and we've mentioned where students can vote. One of the other questions that often comes up is around voter ID, because students may not have voter ID with their current address, so either their school address or their home address. So can you just, Sharmila and Kayla, just quickly touch on voter ID requirements and how students in particular who may move around can demonstrate have the ID they need to vote?
Okay, Kayla, do you want me to start? Okay, okay. So yeah, it definitely ID is a barrier for a lot of students, given the fact that they're often way more mobile than the rest of us. So that's why it's important to have that stuff ready. And so yeah, for federal elections, we have a very extensive ID list. You do have you have to prove your identity, and you have to prove your proof of address. And so often a license can do that. But if not, we have a list of 50 different pieces of ID that you could use. And we often have, a lot of people don't know that you don't have to necessarily, you can use your mobile phone to prove your address. If you have like an internet bill or anything like that, you can use that as a proof of ID. Now, in my infographic, I had had mentioned that it's really important to kind of confirm your place of residence. What is home to you? And during the election, it's particularly important because that's what is going to determine where you're going to be voting. And so it's doing kind of practical steps like that that will help with the process. But yeah, we try to really kind of expand our ID list to make sure that students have what they need to vote.
Okay, did you want to add anything to that? Or you're muted and you can't unmute yourself. All right, thank you. Okay, I think I can ask you to unmute and then try now unmuting yourself.
There we go.
All right.
Thanks. Yeah, I don't have too much more to add, but I can share a link in the chat for a list of voting ID that's acceptable for provincial elections. Yeah, there's a really wide range, I think, but that's why we want to make sure that there's something that every single person has. So, I mean, it can be a school admissions letter, utility bill, cell phone bill, pay stub, tuition or fee statement. If these things have your address on it, all of those can work. I know not everyone has a driver's license. I only got mine in the last few years, I'll admit. So there's a lot of different options on our website. So I'll share that in the link.
And can transcripts or bills from universities serve as ID? So even communication you get, so your student card may not have your address on it, your ID card may not have your address, but communication you get from the university can. Yeah, okay, great. I'm just watching time. We only have a couple more minutes. I have unmuted Noah, so my hope is that we can get to at least one question. Noah, if you want to jump in here, I'd love to hear your question. I apologize to everyone else. Oh no. No, are you able? We're not hearing you. I'm going to make you a co-host in my attempt to now Noah seems to have disappeared on us. Sorry on the technology piece here. But what I can promise everybody is that at lunch, Ontario Elections Canada will be back and have a lunch table that you can join through the Feed Loop platform, and that will give you another opportunity to connect with folks to ask questions that you may have. And I also will say that especially when elections aren't happening, like right now, if there are things that you have questions for, reach out to Sharmila and Kayla. They are like incredibly responsive on email and really want to help address questions or concerns. And if they don't have the answer, they will find the person who has the answer. So please do reach out to them. And then Taylor also, through her work at Amplify, she has a report that she's written that we're going to be releasing as part of our resource pack that gives concrete recommendations about how to engage. And the importance, one critical piece that was a big learning for me in this work on campuses is to connect with your local returning officer, the local person who runs the election early on. Elections Canada has returning officers that are standing by even today for each of the districts. So reaching out to them now and establishing that relation is extremely helpful. Taylor, as she mentioned, was able to work for Elections Canada as a community relations officer. And that was a somewhat unusual arrangement, but was incredibly helpful to the success of her program. So again, as allies, that they are here for you. But with that, I'm aware that it's 11 o'clock. and I have to keep us on time as part of my job. And so I get to thank everyone for being here today. I'm sorry we didn't get to more of your questions, but as I say, this is the beginning of a conversation, and Sharmila has shared her contact information there. We'll be sharing it with folks in following up. And we really and we want to hear from you too. We're also happy to help and build bridges. If there are questions that you have, you're not feeling like you're getting answers, please feel free to reach out to us as well. All right, with that, so you have now a 15-minute break to give you a little more chance to stretch out. And Christian will be running a seat stretch session that you can jump onto through going back into the lobby and seeing that on your left there if you'd like to join him. He's amazing. And then after that, you'll have a chance to go to workshops. Unfortunately, a couple of our workshops we've had to have canceled sort of last minute here. So if you're signed up for one of those workshops, you should get a notification. But if for some reason you're not seeing the workshop you signed up for on the left, then you're welcome to join any of the other workshops. You can just jump right in to what you're interested in. There's lots of really valuable sessions running. So hopefully you'll have a chance to join those. And I apologize for that last minute shift. It was something that was sort of beyond our control, but it's something that, so we will, but see you at your workshop at 11:15. All right, take care. Bye.